Pokemon Gold and Silver deserve full Switch remakes. These games were a huge leap for the series, selling over 23 million copies, making it Pokemon's third most popular titles, introducing the widely beloved Johto region and an additional 100 Pokemon to catch. It brought a lot of features that are a staple to the Pokemon franchise, and it's been 13 years since HeartGold and SoulSilver. But there will be underlying issues that Pokemon will face while making these remakes. Before we start, 98.8% of you guys are not subscribed, so if you've watched any of my videos before, consider subscribing to join the Panda fam. Our next huge milestone is 20,000 subscribers, and I know we can make it. Before y'all say, well, Gen 5 is the next for remakes, I've already covered that in this video. Pokemon Gold and Silver brought things like day and night cycle, breeding, and special attack / defense splits, all being introduced in Gen 2. Gen 2 easily won the hearts of many players when they first released in 1999 and 2000, since they released in different times in the US and Japan. Players got to play the games with new starters, encounter loads of new Pokemon, explore the Johto region, and unravel the plot of Team Rocket. Players did not really need prior knowledge of Gen 1 to fully enjoy the games. And this was also because once they beat the games, you could travel to the Kanto region to face off another 8 gyms and even battle right atop Mount Silver. Additionally, the graphics in this generation was a great step up from Gen 1, as it was optimized for the Game Boy Color and graphically was a lot better. I know that most of you are thinking, but Generation 2 already has remakes with Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and they do. Those remakes were for the DS and were probably one of the best remakes Pokemon has ever made. I briefly talk about it here in this video about Pokemon remakes, but that was in 2009, which was, well, a long time ago, and seeing Generation 2 on new hardware would be so cool. Not to mention, HeartGold and SoulSilver had an insane post-game story with way more mythology than Gen 1. A good example of this is the story of the Brass Tower burning down 150 years prior to the games, where the 3 Pokemon perished, to be revived by Ho-Oh as Entei, Raikou, and Suicune. Red and Blue only had the legendary birds to catch afterwards. Another great example is Celebi, who serves as the guardian of the Ilex Forest, and much more mythology. The important thing to understand from these examples is that it added so much more to the plot and made these mythical creatures seem like they were extremely rare and powerful Pokemon. The world building in this generation was like no other Pokemon game we've seen before. So it only goes to show that Gold and Silver need another remake. And speaking of remakes, it is a possibility that Game Freak makes a remake on the Switch similar to Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. I remember hearing the speculations of a Let's Go Johto game, and I think that would be very likely and also very cool to see. Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was a 2018 remake of Generation 1. It was in a new art style that the majority of the Pokemon community really enjoyed, and it added new mechanics. Most notable was the catching mechanic in the wild. No longer are you able to fight wild Pokemon, but instead catch them. And this was to promote the Pokemon Go franchise, which is still an extremely popular game. This mechanic had mixed opinions, but I personally didn't care too much. If we saw Gen 2 remake in the same style of a Let's Go game, I would just accept it. All the other content of Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was done well, and the soundtrack, art style, and experience was on point. It brought a lot of Generation 1 fans back into the franchise while keeping it fun for newer players. This can be done with Let's Go Johto, having you choose a copy of the game you want your starter to be and set out on a journey. Some of the early fan art of this game had Pichu and Maro as the option, but let me know what Pokemon you guys would want as the mascot for these games. It's a unique idea, and I can see Pokemon going forward with this idea since they saw a lot of success in Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee, but calling it Let's Go Johto and giving us the 3 options of the starters to choose from would be the best way to satisfy everyone. But you can also say that a Let's Go game would not be practical for Pokemon because Pokemon Go isn't as relevant as it was in 2016. It still is popular and maybe even more popular than it was back then, but it was just a marketing tactic for Pokemon Go back in 2016. But who knows? They still might go forward with this plan, but that brings up the question of if Pokemon will remake the generation in an open world style. We saw the backlash that Scarlet and Violet got for being poorly done performance-wise, and this may have been because of the open world and the Switch hardware not being able to keep up. It also might be because Game Freak didn't optimize it for the Switch. But going back to the question, I think a lot of new fans would enjoy seeing Gen 2 in an open world style. If done correctly, this would be insane. The story contents of Gen 2 with all the story building aspects, mythology, and all of the Gen 1 content, this would be the ultimate Pokemon game. Comparing this to Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, it was a remake of Ruby and Sapphire with modern graphics and new mechanics. If Pokemon did something like this but added the new mechanic, spicing things up, and additionally adding everything from Gen 2 storyline without leaving anything out, then I could see great feedback from this game. The problem they would face are being able to optimize the content for the Switch so that doesn't turn out to have bad performance issues similar to Scarlet and Violet. Whether this game is going to be for the Nintendo Switch or the next generation console, I would definitely want it to hold up on a graphical standpoint. And a game that did really well in an open 3D world style was Pokemon Legends Arceus. The Pokemon Legends series only had Legends Arceus, and with the success of that game, it's a no no-brainer for Game Freak to keep making more games in the series. The next big generation of Pokemon games is Generation 10, and we already got Generation 9 last year, so we would probably have to wait until 2025 before getting another generation. So Pokemon has to fill the time by making another remake / spin-off games like Legends Arceus. A Legends Johto game would be really interesting since Gen 2 introduced more mythical lore into the game. Then going back in time to explore the lore might be the right path to go. Seeing the creation of Tin Tower and the Brass Tower and hearing ancient myths about Ho-Oh and Lugia, while also bringing the generation into a 3D game since we haven't seen it since HeartGold and SoulSilver, but that was on the DS. Lugia and Ho-Oh could earn new forms. Ecruteak City could be the village where you start in, similar to Jubilife Village, and Pokemon Legends Johto could be the prequel to Legends Arceus. In Legends Arceus, they made us pick between the 3 starters being Rowlet, Cyndaquil, and Oshawott, but I'm curious to what you guys would want to be the starters. If they go back to the normal Chikorita, Cyndaquil, and Totodile for this approach, a lot of Gen 2 fans would like that. But an issue Generation 2 will face while creating the next remakes is the fact that Pokemon HeartGold and SoulSilver were easily one of the best remakes. The standards are going to be through the roof. If Game Freak does anything the fanbase does not like, then it's wraps, which there'll probably be a few issues the fans will have. If it's something like cutting an important part of the game out or graphics / performance issues, then those are things that fans are going to have an issue with. I want the game to pay attention to detail and really include all parts of Generation 2 into a remake. For example, Pokemon Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire cutting the Battle Frontier. The Battle Frontier was something everyone looked forward to, but when it was cut out, it left many people disappointed. Another aspect Pokemon needs to consider while creating these remakes is the compatibility. Compatibility with any other games in the generation is important for any game remake. Being able to transfer over new Pokemon and forms would make it really fun. Similar to Legends Arceus when we were able to transfer our Hisuian Pokemon. There are so many qualities that go into what makes a good remake, but I can only go over so many, so comment down your suggestions for a remake. Ever since Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the whole Pokemon fanbase has been on edge with the fact that Pokemon could release another game similar, since BDSP was not well received by the majority of the fanbase. So the next games to be remade technically is Black and White, and a lot of the fanbase is hoping it does not get remade in the same style. So the same goes with the Gold and Silver remakes. I feel like the wide majority of the fanbase would not want another remake in the same style as BDSP. Something about the old art style is so good, but making it into a newer 3D form makes it for a distasteful choice in my opinion. The chibi art style was a 50-50 for the Pokemon community. A lot of people loved them and a lot of people hated them. But some of you guys enjoyed it, and I respect everybody's opinion. Let me know your opinion on a Generation 2 remake on the Switch. I would love to hear what you all have to say in the comments. If you like videos like this, I'm making this into a series, and I currently have 2 other videos just like this one on Generations 5 and 6. You guys are all awesome. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.